Despite being phased out of American railroads by the early to mid-1960s, steam still had a place in the American railroading landscape, that being for steam-powered excursions for publicity purposes. The Union Pacific is the only Class I railroad that never retired all of its steam locomotives, as they kept 484 Northern number 844 for excursion service, never officially retiring her, just reassigning her for excursion service. In the 1990s, despite being 50 years old, the Alco Graduate still had a lot of strength left in her, as shown on November 4th, 1996, when she saved the bacon of a freight train on Archer Hill in Wyoming. It was a regular Monday afternoon for a Union Pacific crew taking a freight train westbound manifest towards Cheyenne, Wyoming. With two Union Pacific C40-8s, number 9111 and number 9122, and an SD40-2, number 3222, the freight train had stalled on Archer Hill, 24 miles east of Cheyenne, because of number 3222 slipping and losing traction on the hill. With the train stuck, they asked for a banker engine to couple up to the rear of the freight train to get it going again. As it just so happened, Union Pacific number 844 was returning from a series of excursions in Missouri and Arkansas and was hot on the tail of the manifest. After Steve Lee, the manager of the Union Pacific Steam program at the time, received word about what was ahead of 844, he phoned in the Omaha dispatcher. He asked if his crew with 844 could push the train up Archer Hill to get to Cheyenne. The dispatcher let them proceed through the red signal and they arrived at the rear of the stalled freight train. Once 844 had arrived, the freight crew were still determining if 844 could help get the train going again. Steve Lee responded with the now legendary line, "What do you think they did before diesel?" After accepting help from the 844 crew, the freight train was preparing for 844's shove up the hill. The end-of-train device, also known as an EOT, or FRED, was moved to the back of 844's train of flat cars and an air test was performed. Once the air test was satisfactory, the code of 844's rear-end device was given to the freight engineer so he could monitor the rear-end brake pressure and control the train's entire braking. Once all systems were a go, the two whistles of 844 were given and the train set off. Slipping at first, the 844 and the diesel locomotives got the much-needed traction and started shoving the train up Archer Hill. In an incredible moment of steam engineering, this moment of 844 pushing the freight train was captured by Gandy Dancer Productions. The 844 continued to push the train, going about 15 to 20 miles per hour, and was moving well when it was discovered the freight crew was about to go dead and a dog catch crew was on their way. The current crew of train number 9111 was about to end their shift. The freight train thus had to stop on Archer Hill and a crew swap occurred. After the swap, the train got back underway on the 0.67% grade westbound, very slowly, but regained the speed and continued up the hill. 844 made the final push and finally the crest of Archer Hill was reached. After the train stopped at the top, 844 was uncoupled from the train, the EOT device was put back on the freight train, and the 844 was cut off. The manifest freight train continued downhill under its power while the UP-844 and its train followed back to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Today, the living legend still roams the rails of the Union Pacific for excursions. Still, that November day in 1996 proved that she wasn't just a tool for public relations, but a very adequate option for any emergency for the Union Pacific. Just like 4014.
Oh, you thought we were done? No. We have another UP steam engine to cover. Not the Challenger, that's a story for another video, but the big boy.
November 4th, 1996 was the day UP 844 helped a stalled freight train up Archer Hill in Wyoming. 26 years, 7 months, and 25 days later, history would repeat itself in a small town in Nebraska. On June 29, 2023, a Union Pacific Manifest freight train with Union Pacific AC-44CW CTE number 5729 and a BNSF ES-44C-44 number 4264 leading the train stalled on Blair Hill in Blair, Nebraska. The Manifest was on its way from Chicago, Illinois to North Platte, Nebraska, while UP number 4014 was returning from its stay in Omaha during the College Baseball World Series. After the BNSF unit stalled out and didn't restart on the hill, 4014 was stopped at a red signal a few miles behind the stalled freight train. The dispatcher in Omaha saw that the 4014 was right behind the Manifest and radioed the crew of the excursion about the situation. At first, an idea was floated that 4014 could wait behind the stalled freight train and allow another locomotive to couple up and get the freight train up over the hill. However, this maneuver would result in a several-hour delay if they had waited. In the end, it was decided to use the 8,000 horsepower 4014 to push the train. With that, the dispatcher asked if 4014 could push the Manifest up over the hill. Ed Dickens' UP steam crew accepted the offer and arrived at the rear of the stalled freight train. After some preparations were made to the freight train, Big Boy number 4014 slowly rolled up behind the freight train and coupled up. After a final check was performed, 4014 at 10:35 a.m. started pushing up the 1% grade. Remarkably, several different angles of 4014's shove were caught as multiple rail fans were out in Nebraska that day filming 4014. For over a mile, 4014 continued to push the train in an attempt to get it up and over the hill. Once near the top of the hill, the freight train was uncoupled from the Big Boy and the Manifest continued to North Platte while 4014 continued back to Cheyenne, Wyoming. With both current UP steam program stars having banked freight trains up and over hills, both engines still haven't lost their touch. Famed railroad photographer O. Winston Link perhaps summed it up best when he said, "The steam engine is the most beautiful machine that we ever made. There's just nothing like it." And now we have two awesome moments of those engines still proving that they got a lot left for all to see.